they walked. Some of them ran, filled with energy and excitement. The young students entered the music room, instruments and cases in their hands. A space built for 45 soon filled with 70. Its hard floors, cinder block walls, and bright white lights did nothing to aid in creating a sense of calm. Baton in hand, I stepped up onto the podium at the front of the room and gazed out on the sea of youthful enthusiasm that lay before me. It was like I had imagined over the 5 years of my college. I became a band director. Finally, I was ready to stand up and hit the first note. I waited for the hush of respect to come over the crowd. Nothing happened. Soon, the trumpets started blasting. Then the young clarinets began fending off the trombonists from behind their chairs. The percussionists found the crash cymbals in the back of the room, figured out how to use them. And the tuba section began shooting 2-pointers of balled-up papers into the bells of the euphonium. Befuddled, I spoke. Nothing. I waved my hands. Nothing. It took several painful weeks of trial and much error for me to even begin to manage the classroom as a new teacher. Even after great success as a camp counselor and a proven track record as a camp unit head, where I managed kids by the hundreds, I was no match for 70 seventh graders with noisemakers, instruments, in their hands. The counseling for mentor teachers and supervisors helped me realize that I missed a key step in developing the classroom community. From day one, students did not know what to expect in my classroom. I had not given them any rules. I felt a sobering feeling when one of my mentors suggested I place a sign right in front of me on my podium that read, "You are looking in the mirror. They do what you let them." It was so difficult for me to understand why the students didn't just automatically want to naturally focus on music and make a beautiful sound together. I would come home each day dismayed. "You guys," I would explain, "this would be so much more fun if you would just stop talking. We could actually play music together." I didn't understand why they didn't get it. I was naive. As much as I did not wish to admit, my mentors were right. I had not given my class a structure. Unbeknownst to me, they were looking for the rules from the moment they arrived in the classroom. I had left them bereft of a sense of the emotional safety and security in their learning environment, something that begins with the foundation of rules. Parashat Yitro paints the Israelites in much the same situation. As we read at the opening of Exodus chapter 18, they live in relative chaos in the wake of crossing into newfound freedom. Each day they bring their problems to Moses to solve, waiting in masses for him to have time. It was quite a contrast in their lives. In slavery, Israelites possessed no balance between choice and rules. The Egyptians ruled over them. And now, Bamidbar, in the wilderness, they finally possess the freedom they deserve, but without rules by which to define the structure of daily life. I was reminded in a weekly email from the Hebrew teaching experts at Ulpan Or in Jerusalem that Sinai, the name for this wilderness, is related to the word Sinah, which actually means hatred. There is nothing in the Sinai, no vegetation, no water, little shade, barely any shelter from scorching sun days and freezing cold nights. Survival in this harsh environment would indeed bring chaos, at the least, and hatred from your fellow at the worst. Moses faced the chaos, and Yitro, his father-in-law, provided good counsel. He advised Moses to set up a system of leaders to minister to the needs of the people and communicate God's law. In my short teaching career, I was blessed with a Yitro of sorts. His name was David Newell. He was a retired master teacher. I met him at a music teachers conference, and his advice helped me find order in the chaos. Through his coaching, I learned to effectively communicate expectations in my classroom with clarity and without judgment. My role in managing the classroom should ideally be as an impartial and unjudgmental observer. At his suggestion, I posted 2 large posters on the front wall of the classroom. One was labeled "The Rules," the other, "The Consequences." I explained to the students that they had a choice to make each day when they arrived at class and walked through the door. They could either choose to place themselves in the rules box or in the consequences box. The responsibility each day belonged to them. God, too, responds to the chaos in the wilderness. God's response is the focal point of Parashat Yitro, and some would argue the focal point in the entire Torah, the 10 Commandments. This is God's rules box. Funny, it's posted or alluded to in most synagogues, and some people in our country would have it posted in every classroom if they could. I'm not necessarily advocating for that, but I'm curious about what ways our tradition has developed for helping us recall the rules each day. For example, 3 times a day, we are asked to recite the Shema, morning, evening, and bedtime. Some people also observe a custom of touching the mezuzah on the door to a Jewish space and kissing with their hand. Or others wrap tefillin in the morning, a reminder of these commandments. But for us, and in a similar way for the Israelites too, the reminders of the rules doesn't provide the support or the security we need. There are times we desperately desire God's presence. We also know that God is not always so conspicuous. Medieval Jewish poet Rabbi Judah Halevi captures this challenge in writing. Yah, God, ana emtsa'acha, makomcha na'aleh v'ne'elam. Where might I go to find you? Your place is so exalted and hidden. Ve'ana lo emtsa'acha. Where would I not go to find you? Your glory fills the entire world. Halevi expresses a feeling about God that is quite common in human experience. God is at the same time absent and present. When we need God most, sometimes God is impossible to find. But at the same time, we are continually struck by awe and wonder in seeing the beautiful power of nature, or the unexpected love and kindness of another person who lifts us up when we are most down. The Zohar teaches that when Israel was enslaved in Egypt before this episode in the wilderness, and before the rules had been set, God commanded Moses to come to Pharaoh. Bo el Paro, as the text says, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, in order that I might display my signs amongst them. This occurs back in Exodus chapter 7. The bow is key here. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in the Zohar points out that usually when God calls someone to a task, God uses the verb lech, as in lech lecha, God said to Abraham, to go. But in this case, God speaks to Moses, who had already left Egypt and was in the wilderness, and God commands him to come. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov expounds on this teaching and suggests that this unusual wording places God in Egypt with the Israelites in slavery. God is in fact in the place of greatest distress. This creates a challenging paradox. that God is in fact present at the same time when God appears most unreachable. God's existence under these conditions then seems to be a leap of faith. For some, this is not enough to convince us that God simply does not exist. For others, it is a reminder that God ultimately is unknowable for us face to face and can only be experienced through godly acts in the world. Later in his poem, Halevi writes, Darashti kirvatka, bechol livi kiraticha. My heart cries out to you. Please draw near to me. The moment I reach out for you, I find you reaching to me. In life, we are indeed confronted each day with many choices. In every interaction we have with another human being, we have the power to do good, and we have the power to inflict pain. We have the power to lift others amongst us out of the depths of their greatest despair and into a place filled with love and light. This is godly power, but we know it's not foolproof. The sacred structure is set before us, the one we see outlined in the commandments. It gives us tools to shape our mission of both justice personally and as a community. When we act accordingly, we proliferate the sense of security and safety each of us needs at our core when we wake up each and every day. It is within our power to build a world where Halevi's words can ring true. It depends on our ability to seek out and bring God's presence into our lives through godly acts towards one another. I reach out to you, O God. Likrati itzaticha. I find you reaching back. Shabbat shalom.